It's another Raw video from your favorite YouTube scout, Draft Raw Authentic. Yes, I am finally here making another video, and like I said, it's a Raw one, so there will be no edits. Now, it's been a long time since I made a video. It's been almost 2 weeks or just over 2 weeks. I have midterms coming up, my baby, all of that stuff kind of combined. And I've been looking at draft prospects. I've been finishing a lot of different positions. Haven't looked at every single player for each position, but at least looking at the top players for each position. I've done tight ends already. I've done wide receivers. I've done running backs. Haven't done the quarterbacks thoroughly like I would have or should have, and I haven't done no offensive linemen, so I will be getting to those two. And on the defensive side of the ball, I've done the edge guys / outside linebackers. I've done the interior defensive line. I'm about to start middle linebacker. I'm finishing up corners, and I've already done safety. So the videos will be coming. I have a deadline for my first year anniversary, which will be March 3rd, to have all that stuff in before everything happens. I think March 3rd is pretty much going to be like around the week of the combine or just after the combine. So, it gives some more perspective of guys to go back and look at to say, hey, did this player have that type of speed or that type of strength or that type of quickness? Even though I don't really look at combine numbers and I don't measure those as big things to tell you if a player is going to be good, but it makes you rethink of, okay, I thought this guy was a 4.4 guy. He literally just ran a 4.6. So how fast really is he? And you have to go back and try to see and try to gauge where certain players were. And is it, maybe it's the player's route running ability, or maybe it's the player's quickness out of the hole, or something that really propels him as a player than what you see on the combine numbers. It just makes you go back to make sure that you saw what you saw. So, in this video, I will be doing a new series, which is pretty much, and I'm going to try to do this along the way, but this is going to be called regrading drafts. Now, regrading drafts is going to be based off of me grading players from each draft, not specific players, but just every player drafted in each draft and giving them a certain type of grade. Now, I'm not going below a certain grade, so I'm only looking at players that I think that were A grade or B grade type of players, taking what Madden 12 did some years back in their franchise mode, where you could draft guys and there were guys that were A grade players and there was guys that was B grade, C grade, D grade, F grade. I'm taking that type of concept and I'm putting it into a redrafting, or not redrafting, but a regrading of these guys. Now, it's been pretty much 9 seasons since the 2011 draft, the draft that I will be doing right now. But and I think that is pretty much enough time to say, okay, what players are which players are where they will kind of rank at in terms of A grade and B grade type of players. Now, in my research, over 254 players were drafted in that 2011 draft. Out of all of that, 23 of those guys I would give an A grade, and at least 24 of those guys I would give a B grade. Now, if I was to include undrafted free agents, there was 3 undrafted free agents that was A grades and 2 undrafted ones that were B grades. And I will put it into 26-26. So an even out of 26 players at A grade and then 26 B grades will give you about 52 players overall. Now, I did some percentages when it came to how many of those guys were A grades and B grades. Now, because the numbers are so close, it's pretty much going to be around the same percentage. But the percentage was actually at around 10 to 11% of those players were A grade or B grade type players. That means everybody else, that means about a good 89 to 90% of those players were C grades and lower. And looking at what the NFL always says, what it stands for, not for long, when you think about how many players actually end up being in the league for more than 3 years, the percentage is not that high. Even those players that be in the league for 4 years, the percentage is not that high. And then as it gets further, the percentage starts to dwindle and dwindle and dwindle until you get to that pretty much 10 and 11%. Because they say about 33%, at least a third of the NFL guys that actually make it into the league, whether he was drafted or not, for those each and every year, actually kind of sustain. But it's that certain percentage is a little bit skewed when you think about, okay, what about beyond 3 years? What about after 4 or 5 years? Do they make it after that, because you have first round picks that stay in the league for 5 years but are kind of trash, but they have it under their name that they've been in there for 5 years, but they're trash. So it kind of skews the percentages when it comes to that. But overall, the percentage was was really good. When I looked at the first round guys, and this is not an alarming number, but it's kind of a numbers that you would look at and you'd be kind of like, wow, that's pretty interesting. 15 players, that is literally almost half of the players drafted in the first round, I would have gave an A grade to. 15. And actually, literally the first 7 picks in that draft, which I always will consider the 2011 first round the best first round to ever be drafted in NFL history. The simple fact is that the first 7 players were A-grade guys is huge. And actually, I believe at least 9 out of the 11 of the first 11 players were A-grades. If you take it even further, it would be 10 out of the first 13 or 9 out of the first 11, 10 out of the first 13 or whatever. However, 10 out of the first 13 were A-grade players. And it goes so on and so on, but the numbers are pretty darn good. Then after those 15 A grades, you have 5 B grades. Now with those B grades, there was at least 1 or 2 of those guys. I can't remember who they were particularly. I know one of the guys at Baltimore, Jimmy Smith, I actually gave him a B grade and not an A grade. And there's a reason why I did that too. But I would consider him what I would consider a high B grade and not, just a regular B grade. A guy that, if you look at, let's say, Madden ratings and overalls, in that game particular, Madden 12, anybody that was literally over 90 at some point, if you was a creative player and his overall was at over a 90, he was an A-grade player automatically. If it was at 89, he was a B grade. And that's how it just worked. So that's what Jimmy Smith would kind of lie at. Was he'll have a overall between 87 to 89, and he'll never get further higher than that, because, and me personally, what I would think would not put him higher than that would be ball skills and basically availability staying on the field. But overall, when I look at that, I have 5 B grades, 15 A. So overall, that is 20 players that were A grades or B grades put together. 20 players overall. So that means around 12 players were C grades or lower. That's not good for first round picks. Going even further into that, when I say that, the simple fact is that I put out a video before that pretty much said that, honestly, 30% of the players that get drafted in the first round end up not turning out who you want them to be, whether it's injury, whether they can't play, or it's just they just totally don't get it. They get in trouble and stuff like that. Those 30%, that 30% equals up to about 10 to 12 players. So with that first round, the numbers make sense. The numbers are there. The only thing you have to do is research. The numbers make sense. That 10 to 12 players, which when you think about when I graded as A and B grade players, those, when you look at 10 to 12 players that's not A or B grade players, are the ones that didn't actually end up working out in the NFL. So with that being said, moving down the list, this was an interesting thing that I had to do. In the second round, the numbers dropped dramatically after the first round. I just want to say that. But in the second round, there were 2 A grades and 7 B grades. So there was more B grades in the second round than there was in the first round. And there was significantly less A grades in the second round than they was in the first round. So with those 2 A grades, I had to split in a way. Colin Kaepernick and Andy Dalton were 2 players that were drafted in the second round, and I couldn't choose which ones I'll say this would be A grade, this would be B grade, or both be B grades. So I ended up just splitting them and saying, okay, one of them is A grade, one is a B grade. I'm not going to really name who, but I ended up splitting it and say there was 2 A grades because there was another player that was drafted that was definitely an A grade player, but then there was 7 B grades, so one of those players would be in the B grade category. Looking at it in hindsight, just looking at it now, I guess you can really say, let's just put Andy Dalton in the A grade and put Colin Kaepernick in the B grade just because of what's going on. But honestly, at a certain point, it honestly was switched where Colin Kaepernick was an A grade guy and Andy Dalton was more of a B grade player. When you think about what Colin had to work with in San Francisco compared to Andy Dalton and what he had with the Bengals when you get drafted the same year as AJ Green, who was one of the best receivers. And then you get the next year you get two more weapons in Marvin Jones and Mohamed Sanu, who have both proven that outside of the Bengals organization they both were really good wide receivers as well. It stands the test of time that Andy Dalton probably be a B grade, but in this case, it really doesn't matter. So I did that, 2 A grades, 7 B grades. You know, it's just the way I had to grade them. After that, in the third round, there were still 2 A grade players. I believe one of them was Justin Houston, and then there was 1 B grade player, and who I actually gave the B grade to, DeMarco Murray, and he could have been an A grade if he would have just had at least 1 or 2 more years that would have been 1,000-yard years, or if he would have been still in the league right now. But he also benefited from having a really good offensive line as a runner, even though he was versatile as a pass catcher as well. He benefited a lot from what the Dallas Cowboys had at the time. The year where he had his biggest year in his career, he literally had Travis Frederick at center, Tyron Smith at left tackle, Doug Free at right tackle, and Ronald Leary, I think, played left guard. And whoever played right guard, it really doesn't matter because 4 out of the 5 offensive linemen were like Pro Bowl type of offensive linemen. That's huge. You know what I mean? For a player like him to get those type of numbers. So that's how I had to look at it. In the 4th round, it was 1 A grade, 2 B grades. Like I said, the numbers get significantly low when you get to A grade and B grade players. In the 5th round, you had 2 A grades. You had 4 B grades. The 5th round actually ended up having a little bit more B grades than the 4th round. But that could just be because, you know, the way maybe people kind of look at players, they're definitely going to be looking at them different now. So for that to happen, it's a little weird, but it can happen. But still, you know, it is what it is. Anyway, in the 6th round, copy in the 4th round, they had 1 A grade, 2 B grades, which is pretty much what you would kind of think. And then in the last round, the 7th round, where you usually won't see any A grades, well, you didn't see any A grades in that draft. I mean, in that round. 3 B grade type of players overall. And then, like I said, when it comes to undrafted guys, there were 3 undrafted guys that I definitely gave A grades. One of them was Doug Baldwin. One of them was Dan Bailey. And I forgot who the other player was. And then the 2 B grades, one of them was a fullback that made a Pro Bowl. I think he still played for the Atlanta Falcons. I forgot his name, but because he made a Pro Bowl and I just had to look at it, I was just like, all right, I'll just throw him in with the B grade. And Chris Hogan was another guy that I gave a B grade to within that draft. I forgot what was the other player I gave an A grade to. But overall, it turned out with all picks plus undrafted guys, 26 and 26. If I do the percentage, it's probably around, I'll say, maybe 13, 15%, 13, 14, 15% of those 254 players drafted or just undrafted guys, players that came out that year that actually turned out to be pretty good players within the NFL. But anyway, honestly, I just wanted to share this type of information. Just doing a regrade of some of these drafts, where guys stood at, where guys stand at now. I think that the numbers are actually pretty cool when it comes to that. The simple fact is that you had so much within the first round, and then it was a significant drop throughout the rest of the rounds that it wasn't like alarming, but it was one of those situations where you're just like, wow, you know, when it comes to first round players, it really is a huge discrepancy and a huge like thing. And honestly, even though some players that were drafted later on actually became really, really good and stuff like that, overall, every year they always say, and the way I look at it too, there are legitimately around 20, at the most 20 legitimate first round type of players, while the rest of the players are like honestly kind of fringe first rounds, but they go in the first round because they provide something that is better than other guys that will be in the second round and stuff, and so on and so on. And combine numbers kind of push guys up into it's a whole freaking big mess or whatever. But overall, I looked at that draft in particular because I always felt it was one of the best drafts in NFL history. And it proved itself with that first round. And then what happened with the rest of the thing, with the rest of the rounds in this draft, it's pretty huge. But I will go back, either look at the 2010 or look at the 2012 draft, and I'm going to try to compare those drafts and see where they actually lie at. so we can have a better understanding of what we're looking at. But anyway, before I end this video, please comment. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe. Please share this video. I'm trying to really further what I do with this channel and the particular things that I want to do with this channel. Not just talking about the draft now. I'm gonna try to expand a little bit more. We're going to have my favorite team, the Baltimore Ravens. We're going to have those talks. But overall, I'm going to try to do just a little bit more so I can get more people to get eyes on my channel, and that we can really build a draft community that I think is really needed within the YouTube world. I know there's other guys out there, but I'm trying to build another one and a bigger one that could really reach new heights and reach new things. But overall, once again, this is Draft Raw Authentic. I thank you for watching this video, and please look up for other videos that will be coming out soon when it comes to these draft prospects. So just rock with your boy, all right? Goodbye.